Welcome to Small Business, Big Network, the podcast for small business owners who want big results from their networking. I'm Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist who knows that if you're not working, then networking could help. Justin Nelson started out in the real estate business and now runs Sphere Rocket, a company which sources VAs for businesses. Justin's preferred way of networking is getting invited on stage to present value to a room full of people. And he also likes to follow up networking by sending out chocolate brownies. Thanks very much for being my guest on the podcast today, Justin.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, you're a real estate agent and you have been since the age of 16. What was it that drew you to this industry initially?
Yeah, so I've actually been in the real estate industry since I was roughly 14,
Wow.
and then I couldn't actually get licensed until I was 18. So what drew me to the industry is actually my dad left his corporate career when I was 14, and he kind of said, hey, we're starting a family business, and we don't really have a lot of funds and reserves, so we better all make this work. So I kind of got to start it alongside of him, which was super fun.
And how did you like it when you first got into it?
Well, when I first got into it, it was my first taste of commissions or, entrepreneurial sales where, obviously with him making it a family business, I didn't get paid unless the business got paid. So, but the pay was better than, working at, a local fast food or local retail. So while I had to learn patience, I loved it from the beginning.
And how did you progress after that initial start?
Yeah, so I'll try and keep it super short story. Basically was 14 to 18, was doing everything I could do that you're allowed to do as a non-licensed real estate agent. So I could do paperwork and marketing and lots of lead generation. And then as soon as I became 18, got my license and did actual real estate agent stuff, right? Selling homes, buying homes, helping clients. And then did that to 21. And then ever really since then, over the last 3 to 4 years, I've really focused on the virtual assistant business, which is where I spend 99% of my time now.
Yeah, so let's talk about that then. How did you get to what you're doing now from the real estate industry? Was it something in that industry that kind of sparked this idea?
Yeah, so the real estate industry is in the United States really well known for, and really across the world, for using virtual assistants, from South America or the Philippines or India to help reduce some cost on project type, projects and a little bit more reduction of cost on customer service. And so there had always been a use of virtual assistants in our business when we were in real estate, and I saw that there was a lot of broken, really old school, stagnant ways of doing it. And so I just kind of tried my hand at, hey, what if I just went and did this myself and started a company that served the industry that I kind of had become micro-famous in. And when I say micro-famous, I was 19, 20 years old making $500,000 a year in US dollar. And so I had just enough little micro-fame where people are like, we want to know what he's doing. So that's kind of what led me into the virtual assistant company.
Yeah, so this company's called Sphere Rocket. Where did the name come from?
Yeah, so it's funny. I actually told this on another podcast a few weeks back, and not many people know this, is we were actually called Social Agent to start because we were trying to help real estate agents be more social, to be more connected to their audience, using virtual assistants, just minor things like wishing people happy birthday or sending out greeting cards and things like that. And then we actually got sued over the name because I was really young, naive. I never thought to maybe look up trademarks before I started a company. So we didn't fight it. Obviously, we were in the wrong. I was a little upset because I was like, man, we did so much work in marketing and things. But looking back now that we're, a 4,000 or 5,000 person company, Sphere Rocket's a much better name, right? Like for SEO and Google and things like that, like 1,000 things pop up when you type social agent, where now if you type Sphere Rocket, there's nothing else out there with that name. So it was a kind of a business learning lesson is how we got to the current name.
Yeah. So tell me what Sphere Rocket does.
Yeah, so Sphere Rocket really is a business HR recruiting firm that will come into businesses all across the globe. So our clients are, based in the U.S., based in, Europe, based in the Middle East, like all over. Like no matter where we're at, where we help businesses, usually in a little bit more progressed economies where they're looking for some reduction of labor costs. So Sphere Rocket, our headquarters is in the Philippines. So we help businesses basically outsource, and so that could be anything from a solo entrepreneur just wanting to help with their marketing that they're too busy for. And it could be all the way up to a big corporation that needs call center support or chat support. So we've really placed it all. So we're really just a headhunter recruiter that helps small businesses, and we're a consultant because a lot of times a business will say, I'm so busy, but I don't know what I need help with, or I don't know what I need talent for. And then some businesses are like, man, we're just not very busy. We need help with our lead generation or marketing and to kind of get, kicked in the right direction. So we kind of help with all of the above.
Yeah. Now, you started off doing this for other people in the real estate sector, but who is it that's using you now?
Yeah, so not to give like a generic answer, but I'll kind of give one. I'd really say we're in about 400 different industries now across the 5,000 VAs we've placed. So real estate was industry number one, but since then, now we have any small business owners, course creators, electricians, plumbing companies, we have digital marketing companies, we have podcast companies. Like we now are over in what we consider 400 industries. So it could be the local bakery that just needs help with their marketing. It could be the local place that sells cars, the car dealership. So really now we serve anybody that is selling a product. It could be a grocery store, could be a service like an electricity, or plumbing, or it could be all the way to small business owner, I'm selling things on Pinterest and Etsy. So, we really have a solution for any business owner.
Yeah. And what sort of difference does having a VA make to those business owners?
Yeah, so for a lot of the business owners, then I'll kind of tell you my story. Like here in the United States, like I wanted to always have a whole bunch of employees, right? Like I wanted to be able to go into an office and high five and build a culture. And when I first got started, and I was making, let's say, $100,000 a year, like I didn't have that was really good money, but I didn't have an extra $50,000 to give to an assistant, right? Yeah. I didn't have an extra $50,000 for an assistant and then $20,000 for a marketing director. And so the virtual assistants allowed me to kind of bridge that gap. So I was able to hire a VA, for example, for $15,000 a year, full-time, 40 hours a week, which is a great wage for them. So a really good way to live life. And then, so now I was able to retain $85,000, but yet still have a full-time assistant. And so it allowed my business still to grow, to the point to where I could hire my first US-based assistant, then my second. And so for a lot of business owners that, might be a little strapped for cash. And when I say strapped for cash, the business may be growing super well. But when you're growing, a lot of times your funds are a little constrained or you have cash flow. And so for a lot of people, it's a great way to get help in your business without having to wait for the time that you can afford a full-time salary of someone that's in person. So it's a great way to, the biggest thing we always preach is we're not a company that's trying to eliminate jobs in your local market. The business owners we work with, we don't want them to just lay everybody off and go use virtual assistants. We want the virtual assistants to complement what they already have.
Yeah. And so what are some of the common tasks that people outsource their VAs and maybe what are some of the unusual ones?
Yeah, so then the common ones are what you hear all the time. It's social media, especially in a day and age of video. So we hire a ton of video editors these days, especially for business owners that are doing content or doing things like that. We then do a lot of customer servicing, so I'll give you just a one-off example of an electrician that's coming to do, electrical work at your home. If a client calls the electric company, we have VAs that will answer those phone calls and they'll set the appointment and they'll schedule the time for the electrician to go out, and then the virtual assistant will communicate with the electrician. They're kind of like the back-end admin team for that business, because I'm sure we've all called a company in our local area to do a service and they their phones don't work or they're like, we'll call you back. And so VAs are a great way to man the phones 8 hours a day and really provide customer service. And then you got just customer care, right? We have virtual assistants in many businesses where their only job is to take care of the past clients. So is to call them every quarter and check in. I always tell people, if you have an insurance agent or you're a real estate agent or, whoever does like your life insurance or, how many times have they called you in the past year, right? How many times have they called to check in on you? And most of the people would say, well, they haven't. I haven't talked to them since I signed up 5 years ago. And so a lot of times VAs, like if my insurance agent called me today and said, hey, Justin, just checking in on you, can we do anything? I would actually probably be like, hey, I have 3 referrals of people that I know that need to use your services, but without their contact, I don't really think about it. Yeah. And so a lot of times VAs will do things like that. And then some odd ones, it's funny, and I know you'll kind of get to where people can find me, but if you ever just search me, Justin Nelson Sphere Rocket, a lot of my YouTube videos and things like that are about kind of the odd things I have virtual assistants do for me. Like I have virtual assistants that watch my house cameras. So they if my house cameras are going off, they'll jump on real fast while they're at their computer and just check it, make sure all's good at my house. I have virtual assistants that do all my like flight coordination. I travel a lot and speak a lot across the country and across the globe actually, and so they'll plan my hotels and my when I get to the airport, is there going to be a car waiting for me? And so a lot of those types of things are things that they do.
Yeah. Now tell me about your GoPro experiment and what you found from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's actually where a lot of the unique things come from. Is so back in the day, I had a business coach, and he said, Justin, you need an administrative assistant. And I said, I don't know what I would have them do. And he was like, hey, just strap a GoPro to yourself on your chest, like someone that's backpacking or, going on a hike or, an extreme sportist. And he's like, just record all day what you do. And so I thought it was kind of crazy. But what I realized is when I recorded what I did all day, number one, I found a lot of dead time in my day where I could probably work a little bit harder. So that's kind of a side fact. But number two, I found a lot of things that I was doing that I could give to a virtual assistant. So for example, when I'd wake up in the morning, the camera would catch that I would spend about 30 to 45 minutes on my phone. And what I would do is I would scroll through Facebook and I would like and heart all of the people that are either past clients or possible prospects. And he was like, well, that 45 minutes that you just went and put hearts and emojis and comments on, he's like, you could have a virtual assistant do that for you. No one would ever know that it's not you liking it. Yeah. And he's like, that's not to be disgenuine, but he's like, guess what you can do with that 45 minutes now? He's like, you can go to the gym, you can spend it with your family or with your kids, you can do whatever you want to do with that extra time. And that, if you do it right and you replace that time and you give that to a VA and you use your time wisely, your business will grow, your family relationships will grow, or your health will grow. Now, if you just sleep in an extra 45 minutes, that could be good too sometimes. But or if you just watch Netflix to replace that 45 minutes, it might not be as healthy of an option, but it's also, all about, recharging too. So
yeah, I think that's fascinating. So how many VAs do you have on your books now, and how do you find them?
Yeah, so on our books, we have a little over 5,000 that we've placed with other business owners. So we call that about 5,000 in pseudo management. And what I mean by pseudo management is if you called me and said, Justin, I need a VA for marketing, we're going to recruit them. We're going to, and when you say how do we find them? I have a recruitment team of about 60 people that work for me personally in the Philippines, and their job is just to recruit. They're sitting on 20 live interviews a day each. Just going through recruits, finding the position, screening, doing the background checks, all of those things. And so kind of in a roundabout way, we have 5,000 that we're in pseudo management of. And an example would be I give you the VA for marketing after we recruited them for you. We help you kind of manage them, but ultimately they go onto your team. But I have about 100 on my personal payroll that work for me directly servicing the 5,000 other plus VAs that we've placed out.
Yeah, wow. So what kind of advice would you give to someone who's considering outsourcing some work to a VA?
Yeah, so first advice I would give people is no matter who you go through to help you, there's lots of resources even outside of us that are great options. Number one thing is don't be too scared, right? Because outsourcing is, fairly inexpensive all across. So if you make a leadership mistake or, you're not as prepared as you maybe should be, you're not spending $5,000 a month on a salary. You're not spending $3,000 a month on a salary. I'd love to learn my leadership mistakes and, become a better leader without it hurting my pocketbook as much. So that'd be my first thing I tell people is don't be afraid. You're not committing. Also, I try and remind people when it goes to any type of hiring is you're never obligated to keep someone on your team more than the next second. Like a lot of times people look at my payroll now and they go, Justin, you have 100 VAs in the Philippines working for you. You have 20 US based staff working for you. They're like, what's the risk of having 120 people on payroll? And it's my 120 people on payroll, they're not guaranteed to have a job all year. So like if next month my company had something crazy happen and it's like you can no longer do what you do, well, I could lay off every single person, and it's not an obligation. So I say that because sometimes when people hire, they think about, oh, it's going to be $30,000 a year to hire someone. But really what you should be thinking about is, well, it's going to be $3,000 a month, right? It's like, what are you on the hook for? You know, it's actually going to be $1,500 every 2 weeks. And so kind of, because that big number of 30 could scare some people, right? It could be like, man, that's a big number, but you're really only committed to, you know, a few weeks at a time. And so you kind of break it down and go, if it doesn't work out, well, you're not out 30,000, you're out 1,500, right? Or whatever that number is. And when it comes to VAs, the average VAs across the world right now in the Philippines or India average about $4 an hour. So, you know, for most people, the worst risk you're going to be out is $640 a month if it didn't work out, right? Or it wasn't and it's not usually that it doesn't work out. It's more or less that you change your mind. You don't want a VA. You'd rather maybe it be in person or, you know, whatever the story may be.
Yeah. Now, I know that networking is important to you. So how have you used it to grow?
Yeah, great question. So our entire business has been grown on networking. So we don't do a lot of like Facebook ads. We don't do a lot of things that people might think we do. We spend most of our time growing our business through networking. And the way that I found fastest to network is I want to be the one on stage presenting value to a room. So what I found is if I'm going to events or things like that, like I'm always building relationships, trying to get on more stages and come from a place of value. Because, you know, if I go to a networking event and let's say there's a presentation, like if I can be the one giving the presentation, well, now after I'm done, all 50 people or 500 or 5,000, whatever size it may be, or 5, right? They now know my story and they're like, man, I want to go learn more about that. Versus if I walk in a networking room and someone else is on stage, you know, well, now I have to go and convince everybody else in the room and build relationship a little bit harder, takes a little bit longer to, you know, exchange. We all say exchange the stories, right? You know, if you go to network and you meet 20 people, well, you're going to have to tell your story 20 times. And you're going to have to hear their story 20 times. And so, which is nothing wrong with that. Like that's a great way to network. It's way better than not networking at all. But the way we've supercharged it is really just a large focus on how many places can I present, you know, without, you know, coming from a place of salesmanship or pitching or, you know, making people feel like they're being sold. It's just like, how many rooms can I get into? Just like a podcast that I can, you know, share a message and, you know, give some tips and tricks. And, you know, a lot of times people, when they think that they go and speak on a stage, like they think they have to sell something. You might have heard me on this podcast. I said, hey, here's some tips and tricks. And there's 100 other options out there that are good just like us. And so when you come from a place of sincerity on stage, like that's how, you know, when people are like, man, he just really wanted to give back today and he didn't really care if he got sales or not out of us. People really relate to that sincerity and vulnerability if it's authentic, right? If you're not being authentic and you're hiding it, people can feel that. But I would say that's probably our kind of tip and trick to networking to supercharge it.
And getting yourself on the stage with that opportunity to speak really positions you as a leader, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the next thing I'll say is kind of a good and bad thing is humans naturalistically will give you a level of precedence and hierarchy when they see you on a stage, right? It's like whether it's true or not, like someone could have $0 in their bank account, have a $0 business, and if they go on stage and they say something, people automatically put them in their mind subconsciously in an elevated position. So obviously some people in the world use that unethically to their advantage. And, you know, obviously we don't go on stage and lie and do things like that. But just being on the stage, like even if you go on stage and go, hey, last year my business made $30,000. It doesn't have to be $3 million. It doesn't have to have 1,000 employees, but just telling your story, you're more brave than 90% of people in the audience that would never speak on stage. So people relate to you, and are most likely at the end of the day going to want to know what your business does, and they'll buy from you, right? Whether it's a product, a service, or just be someone that refers you business.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. And is networking something that you encourage your clients to do as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of our clients, obviously, my virtual assistants only stay employed with my clients if their businesses are growing and they have money coming in. So I do a lot of teaching of our clients. Selfishly, I tell people it's kind of selfish of me, but it's also a good selfish. Like, if my clients grow their business, my business will grow too, because they need more people. But yes, absolutely. I tell my clients to do the same thing. We actually, if you go to my YouTube channel at Justin Nelson, you'll find a lot of like the tips and tricks that we use to get on stages, how to get on more stages. So 100%, I think it's the lifeline to any business.
Yeah. So how do you think that small business owners can get the best out of networking?
Yeah, so I'll give you a really simple tip and trick, and this can be, obviously it's easier if you have a virtual assistant or some type of assistant, but the number one thing I like to do when I go network is the business cards. And when I say business cards, we've all been to networking and someone hands you a business card, and then we put it in our car or truck and we throw it away, or we go to dinner after and we just lose it in our pockets and our spouse finds it. And so what I always tell people, it's funny when people come up to me and they give me their business card, I'm like, oh, awesome, thank you, hold on just a second. And I take a picture of it, front and back, and then I hand it right back to him, and I'm like, here you go. I'm gonna get this to my assistant, and we're gonna be in touch. And here, I'm gonna save you some money, which might seem kind of silly for a few cents that a business card may save them, but it's just kind of a thing that I do. And so I say that to say, getting the data from your event and not just hoping that someone's going to remember you or hoping that someone's going to call you one day. Because you got to remember, that person, unless you're just networking one-to-one and you're at coffee, that person's going to go network with 30 other people.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, those 30 other people may be more interesting than me, but they're not going to be better at follow-up and building a relationship than me. So as soon as I take a picture of that business card, my virtual assistant gets notified that my phone library has a new photo. And they'll go in there and they will send that person a little $5 brownie and gift card, or when I say a card and brownie, and it will show up to their door usually within 48 hours. And so as that person leaves networking, now I have 30 people's contact information, and I send 30 little brownies out to their door that I didn't do any of it. I went home and I hang out with my wife and family, and my virtual assistant had it already done by the time the day was over, so they're hanging with their family. But now I have 30 people in that room that I networked with that all remember me as the number one person, just because we sent a $3 brownie that I didn't even do. And all I did was take a picture of it. So I think just trying to stand out too is a tip and trick that we use in the networking world.
Yeah, no, I love that. So are there any networking experiences that you had that really stand out for you?
Yeah, I would say the networking experiences that really stand out, and this is going to again sound a little bit different than what some people would say, but there's two trains of thought in my opinion when it comes to networking. You obviously have mass networking, then you have intimate networking. So intimate networking for us is what we call our top 25. It is, if the person's on our top 25, it's someone we really want to get into business with or really want to know. We do a lot of intimate networking. It's trying to get them one-on-one for coffee or dinners or experiences, to be able to get to know them a little bit better, maybe their spouse a little bit better. But then we also have mass networking, right? So mass networking is where we'll go, I'm going to go to this real estate conference and I am just going to be the most bubbly, friendly person for the next 72 hours. I'm going to drain all of my people energy out this weekend and then I'll recover for the next few weeks. And I just want to meet 150, 200, 300, 400, 500 people. And I know going in that those conversations are going to be maybe a little bit more, they're going to lack a little bit of depth to them sometimes because they're quick. Yeah. But it also allows you with a good system in place, a good virtual assistant, someone to help set post-conference meetings, then it's cool, now I got 500 people that actually would remember me if I called them. They might not know exactly my whole story or exactly what I do, but they're definitely not going to forget me when I call them afterwards. So I guess it's just kind of what you're going for, and we do both a lot.
Yeah, all about being memorable, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, that's been brilliant. Thank you ever so much for sharing your thoughts with me, Justin. Just finally, if people want to get in touch with you, find out more about Sphere Rocket, what's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, so the best place is to go to higherleverage.com, which is HIRE leverage.com. It's got everything. It's got resources, libraries, YouTube channel, all of that can be found on there. And of course, if we could ever be of service to anybody or consult them on needing a virtual assistant, that's also a great place to find where we are at and what we do and all of our pricing.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Justin.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Network. If you found this podcast useful, please do rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with the rest of your network too.